Before you watch this video, I just want to say that I was not comfortable playing Cassidy in a public lobby, so I played him versus AI, and then I switched to Mystery Heroes because I was sucking so bad. So don't judge the footage in the background, please. Hey y'all, if you've seen any of my previous videos, you'll know that I really enjoy reading characters as queer, whether I have evidence for it or not. This is a video focusing specifically on Cassidy, who I believe could fall under the queer umbrella, specifically bisexual, but who's focusing on labels. So initially when I had this video planned out, I didn't realize that Cassidy had so much lore, and so we'll be going through it in the beginning of this video. It's pretty long, so just skip to this timestamp if it doesn't interest you. The wiki has an entire essay on his early life that I couldn't find any real sources for, so we'll be starting where Cassidy meets Ash for the first time, so that I don't get anything wrong. Cole Cassidy and Elizabeth Ash meet for the first time in a jail cell. His first words to her are, "You've got a lot of grit for a rich girl." From there, they somewhat hit it off. Ash revealed to Cassidy that her parents would disown her when she turned 18, and had a plan to gather up as much money as possible by committing illegal acts against her parents' company, and recruited Cassidy because he's a good shot, and she figured he also needed the money. During their first heist, Ash and Cassidy bravely escaped. A fire was caused by entering the incorrect code on some crates. They escaped this, but security drones were sent out after them as well. They managed to fend them off at the cost of their truck, and were forced to walk across the desert before being picked up by Bob. After that, Cassidy was no longer as enthusiastic about their crime spree. They hadn't gotten much and had almost died. Ash, however, wanted to get back in there. Still, she offered Cassidy an out, though told him that they could certainly make a lot more. Eventually, he relented. Skipping some more lore I couldn't find actual evidence of. Heists, more heists, run-ins, and betrayals. Yep, couldn't find any short stories or comics on it, so I'd love if anyone has them. Right, now on to what I can talk about. Somewhere in the timeline, the Deadlock Gang was busted by Overwatch, and Cassidy was given the option to join Blackwatch or rot in a jail cell. Of course, Cassidy chose to join Blackwatch. Little side note, I like to think that this is where he stopped going by Jesse McCree. I know that the name was changed due to sexual harassment charges against the real person, but I like to explain things with lore. So he started going by the name Cole Cassidy, almost as if he was turning over a new leaf. During his time in Blackwatch, Cassidy began to appreciate the flexibility of it, not bound by the same rules as other groups. He figured he could atone for his sins through this covert ops group. He was not enthusiastic about Moira's hiring into Blackwatch, saying that hiring her was a mistake. Can't say I blame him, though one could argue she was not the most problematic member at the time. During his time in Blackwatch, it is unknown when, he meets Fariha Amari, or Farah, and the two quickly become friends. Cassidy was eventually assigned to the Echo Project, and told to protect the head researcher, Dr. Mina Liao. At some point after King's Row had fallen victim to the Null Sector attacks and Dr. Liao was killed, Echo put into quarantine. Later, the events of Retribution are set into motion. Gabriel Reyes had an idea to apprehend an associate of Talon, assuring Cassidy, who had been disappointed that the mission was simply that it would allow them to hit Talon much harder. They hit it out with the other two members, Genji and Moira. Arriving in Venice, where the operation was to take place, the Blackwatch members successfully broke in, dispatching and/or incapacitating many Talon members along the way. Eventually, they located the businessman in question, Antonio Bartolotti, who seemed unconcerned. With his influence and friends, he told them, he would simply be out of jail within the week. In a move that enraged Cassidy and threw the entire plan out the window, Reyes planted a shotgun shell in Bartolotti's chest, killing him and triggering the alarm. Later, Genji asked why the kill had bothered Cassidy so much, to which Cassidy pointed out that it was an execution. The incident was reported to the press, thrusting Blackwatch's existence out into the public and immediately shattering any trust that they had in Overwatch as a whole. Cassidy and Reyes were both told to give their version of the events, in which Cassidy expresses that, while he believed Antonio deserved what he received, it did not seem right, and that moment was where everything had begun to go wrong.
Everything was going according to plan. We were going to get in, grab the target, then get out. But then all hell breaks loose. It was like the whole damn city was trying to kill us.
Blackwatch and its agents were suspended as the division was placed under investigation. During the King's Row uprising, Cassidy had been in London, where the Overwatch agents were firmly not allowed to be per the Prime Minister's order. Reyes simply suggested that Cassidy was on vacation when questioned by Jack Morrison. At some point during the uprising, Cassidy received his robotic arm, though it is unknown why. During the corrosion of Overwatch, Cassidy disappeared underground. Years later, he re-emerged as a gun for hire, and he fought for causes that he believed were just. The events of Trainhopper take place, which will be linked in the description. Sometimes afterwards, he stops a robbery at a ramen shop, though the report mainly focuses on his out-of-date clothing choices. After the recall is initiated, Cassidy learns that Echo is being transported aboard a military train and tips off the deadlocks that said train, full of high-value equipment, would be crossing Route 66. The events of reunion take place, and Cassidy fights off the gang and activates Echo, sending her to answer the recall in his place. Afterwards, he drives off on Ash's beloved bike.
That's my bike! McCree!
Towards Cairo, answering Anna Amari's call to meet up, though not without a lot of debate on whether or not he should instead of right off into the sunset. Ultimately, he labels himself as the type to stand and fight versus run away. Cassidy encouraged Anna to return to Overwatch, but instead, she suggested he return and lead them to teach the new generation. She supplies him with information on other recruits. Farah is recruited, and then Cassidy heads up north with the intent to recruit Zarya. Sometime during his trip, he realizes he's being followed by someone utilizing Talon tactics. They tussle, Baptiste reveals himself to be a former member of Talon, and Cassidy extends a kind hand because he doesn't want to be one to turn away another person. Zarya is recruited, then Diva is recruited. Can you tell that I'm getting exhausted by how much lore this man has? I read all of it, believe me, but summarizing it is a fucking nightmare. We'll discuss the events of As You Are later in the story, but that's next on the timeline. Baptiste, Farah, and Cassidy are on their way to Gibraltar. This brings us to the current day, where Overwatch's PvE missions left off. The new recruits joining Overwatch, recruiting Vivian Chase, and effectively getting no hug.
Maybe we can help.
Winston!
Hey, we didn't get a hug.
Right, so if you want to know more about what happened in PvE, your best bet is YouTube, I think, because I will not be summarizing all of it here. I might do a playthrough because I don't see many good ones on YouTube, and I know some people prefer no commentary, but I'm getting off track here. Okay, so that was a fucking nightmare. Let's pretend I didn't say anything and just start forcing my queer agenda upon yet another Overwatch character. In the comic, As You Are, Baptiste asks Farah if her and Cassidy are a couple. She starts laughing and reveals that they're more like siblings, and that she's also a lesbian. But then Farah inquires deeper. She asks about Baptiste's question, to which he replies, "Well, I must admit, he has a certain charm. I like a person who's sure of himself." The conversation carries on as normal, which I want to focus on. Farah, who has known Cassidy for a very long time, does not shut the thought down. She does not confirm nor deny that such a thing would be possible. In fact, she seems interested in that gossipy sister way. I believe with my whole heart that had she known that Cole was not interested in dating men, she would have said something. From what we can see of her, Faria is a wonderful friend. She cares about people to the extent that she will not spare feelings in order to cause prolonged pain, in this case, Baptiste potentially pining after a straight man. Of course, this is purely interpretation, but that's what this entire video is, a reading deeper than surface-level interactions. Here's the entire piece of the story I'm referring to, by the way, so you don't have to track it down. I'm lazy, but not that lazy. "No, not at all," Baptiste said quickly. "I just didn't want to assume. You two seem to know a lot about each other. I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable." She raised an eyebrow, as if the thought of him making her uncomfortable was preposterous. "No, I'm fine. Just sorry to disappoint you." "Oh, no, you seem wonderful. I just..." Baptiste trailed off, not sure how to proceed. "Oh, you were asking about Cole?" Baptiste met her gaze. There was a moment of recognition, and he chuckled. "Well, I must admit, he has a certain charm. I like a person who's sure of themselves." Farah flashed a smile. She wove together her fingers and pulled her hands behind her head, leaning back in the pilot's chair. "Well, that's Cole. He wasn't always this way, but coming back to Overwatch, rounding up new recruits, he's at the end of a very long road. I'm actually kind of proud of him." Completely random, but can I point out the little bye banner at the top? I think that's a super cute detail that I literally just noticed. Next, let's talk about his interactions. It's a very common bisexual stereotype that we are flirty, sometimes extending to being promiscuous. Of course, the bi community has fought these stereotypes for a very long time, but who knows if Blizzard has ever spoken to a true bisexual. Bap and Weaver flirt with half the cast, after all. Speaking of Baptiste, his and Cassidy's interaction about sticking around can be read as an interaction with deeper meaning to it. Cassidy claims that Baptiste would miss him too much, and Baptiste calls him handsome. Of course, men can complement each other, but from what I stated earlier about the comic and their initial meeting, this interaction does not feel entirely platonic. I'm also not saying that they're flirting in a romantic manner, because attraction is complicated and not always as simple as that, but I think the interaction can be read as two queer men poking at each other. Going off script here, but I do have to add that I think there's just something inherently homoerotic about giving somebody a second chance. You know? You know what I mean by that? His interactions with Echo could also have a flirty connotation. She really likes to say his name and threatens to steal his cowboy hat. However, I will not be delving deeper into this specific point because to me, Echo is not a full functioning adult. She is 16 years old, and many of her in-game interactions give off somewhat childish vibes, like someone still learning about the world, which she is. To me, it just feels a little bit strange to be talking about her romantic preference with someone who is quite a few years older than her, and an adult, no question. I also just really love the idea of Big Brother Cassidy. I gotta admit, a lot of people are fans of Cassidy and Hanzo together, myself included. Who doesn't like stoic ex-himbo? Looking at the voice lines between them, we can read Hanzo as teasing Cassidy by calling him predictable, or asking if he's fired a bow to throw him off when he speaks about traditional taste. Also, both times he talks to Hanzo, he's indirectly complimenting him, which I don't think needs to be read as flirty, but it really shows that Cole pays attention and knows how to interact with people, just as he does in so many other voice lines. I think he's a very genuine human being. Also, we all know that only queer people are nice. Nobody else is nice. It's only us. Of course, he also tells Moira that she looks great, and has a friendly interaction with her despite his initial skepticism of the scientist during Blackwatch. But we all know that Moira likes women, so she's unreceptive. Okay, let's talk about Ash. Ash and Cassidy are confirmed to never have dated, and though I could not find sources, the wiki does state that Ash was never Cassidy's type due to her wealthy background. Something that may surprise you is that I don't mind these two together to an extent. Ash seems to genuinely dislike him, but also she seems to dislike half the character roster, so who knows how much of that is truly genuine. They don't have very many interactions that leave me with a warm feeling, though, so I like the idea of them being anti-friends. Besides, Ash fully believes that Cassidy betrayed the Deadlock Rebels, and I can't imagine anything romantic stemming from her feeling as if Cassidy had thrown her into the dirt. I am also a huge lesbian Ash enjoyer, but that's a separate video. I think a lot of his interactions with different characters can be read as him being a good person just because, and you can decide which ones have deeper meanings. As I stated earlier, it's not black and white. Humans are deeper than romantic and platonic. I think that can be an entire conversation on its own, but I would need to set aside yet another video to dive deeper into this topic. What I mean is that Cassidy might just be Cassidy. Maybe he doesn't label himself, and he just enjoys humans. Well, and Omnix, I guess, but you guys know what I mean. He doesn't really give a shit about anyone's external factors and just sees who they are, as evident by his interactions, treating even the less moral characters with no hatred. As much as I'd love to talk more about queer culture and how Cassidy fits into it, I truly don't believe that the amount of thought put into queer characters is that high. The Overwatch team has said time and time again that they're committed to diversity, but they've never released anything about how they design specifically their LGBT characters, and so until they do, we have no idea how deep the understanding and implications of queerness are. Blizzard is just one of the few companies that I can say isn't just farming us for money. At least currently. Pharah, Tracer, Soldier, and Baptiste are all characters that were said to be queer after their release, in optional comics and short stories. There's no monetary gain to be made there. The free name cards also follow this narrative. Lifeweaver was announced to be pansexual upon release, which we have no way to know the intentions of. The developers explicitly stated that they wanted his sexuality to be a part of him, which I respect, considering if you dare to exist as yourself as queer, you're immediately too loud and you should make sure others are comfortable. Venture is the second character to be announced as queer upon their release. I think that being non-binary had to be announced, because Overwatch players aren't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed and tend to completely ignore things placed directly in front of their face, even if the developers had used they-them pronouns for Venture the entire time they talked about them. Their actual release could be pandering, but to have one confirmed genderqueer character out of, over 35 characters? At the end of the day, none of these characters' personalities revolve around their sexuality or gender, which seems to make the cisgender or heterosexual population very happy when all the rainbows are normal enough for them. I'll stop yapping, but I definitely have a few videos in mind. Perhaps I will make them. Anyways, that's all. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll admit this video isn't as in-depth as it could have been, which, it's already incredibly long and convoluted anyways, so I'm just gonna leave it there. Have a good day, drink some water, and please interact with this video if you enjoyed. It helps me out a lot. Bye-bye. I decided that I want to, fuck. A fire was caused by entering the incorrect code on some crates. So we started going back. Just to fucking delete it. During his time in Blackwatch, Cassidy began to appreciate the flexibility of it. Not bound. Arriving in Venice, where the operation was to take place, the Blackwatch members successfully. In a move that enraged Cassidy and thrown out through English, he learns that Echo is being transported. A portability. Motherfucker, why can't I just fucking do it right the first fucking time? By someone you. Oh my god. I can't fucking read. Blackwatch. Motherfucker. Sometime during the trip, he realizes he's being followed. She asks about Baptiste's. I might kill myself. I'll stop yapping now, but I've gotten a few videos. What the fuck am I saying?